Hello world, welcome to another segment of This is Not Fake News. I am the intellectual descendant of Batman, and this is the intellectual descendant of Robin.
Yeah.
And on October 7th, 2023, we are facing a dilemma again. And that dilemma is?
Well, we fight crime the old-fashioned way, but the trouble is we're in a position where if just like about 39 days or so, there'll be a crime of people not getting their Social Security, people not getting their Medicare.
Yeah, and this is an old story.
The Republicans have sandbagged things completely. They've created chaos.
And this is nothing new. This has been going on for the last 40 years. There have been
stoppages of the government, and there have been debt ceiling, garbage, BS types of things.
And right now there is a lot of whining as though Ukraine is the fault for this. It's not Ukraine. Okay, we need to hold the front line of the free world in Ukraine. But the real problem is what I've been saying for the last 40 years, is that we need four things. Okay, number one, we need to pay attention.
That's
right?
You, the public.
The public, yes. Number two, we need to make an attempt to convert a portion of the other side. And I say portion because there's some Trump supporters that you're not going to convince. They're just lost in a brainwash.
There's there's like Liz Cheney. There are some people that can't be at least,
Well, I'm talking about working people voting.
And working people.
Right. That's
people like the people on the picket line that were going to vote for Trump. It's crazy, isn't it?
And the third thing we need to do, which would be a reaction of that, is to get enough Democratic votes to have all three, which are?
All three of the parts that aren't the courts. That is the two houses of Congress and the presidency to be in the hands of the Democrats.
Right, the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Correct.
Now, if we have that power there, we can then get rid of what?
Well, we would need to get rid of or reform the so-called filibuster.
Filibuster, right.
Or as I've called it, the democracy buster.
Right.
It prevents democracy from working.
Because it prevents democracy from working, right. And now number four would be taxing the billionaires, and we could only get there if we do those three things first.
We need at least those three things, and some have suggested it might require to get enough Supreme Court justices that would go along with taxing the billionaires.
The billionaires need to pay some taxes. Hello.
Yeah. They've been getting away with things. Recently it was leaked that some of these billionaires pay zero taxes. Yeah. Some pay like 3%. Now I defy you to find an auto worker that pays 3%.
Right.
How about that?
Right, and they use their attorneys to find ways to go around the laws, to get away with not paying taxes.
Sneaky ways, yeah.
Yeah, and much of it is in Wall Street investments and stuff, offshore.
Well, it's a way where if the tax goes up to the sky, they take a loan out from the bank it used to be lower interest rates. They did this more frequently. By an accident of fate, the interest rates have gone up and it's less lucrative for them. But that shouldn't stop us from at least making an attempt to make them pay their fair share.
Yeah, and this is an old story again. And in the news and on the radio and the pundits and all the talking heads and the general citizens calling in with their opinions on the radio, it's like I'm hearing over and over again, why should we pay for Ukraine when we got this problem here, when we got that problem there? And so now it's like, now all of a sudden it's Ukraine's fault. No, it's not. 40 years of letting the billionaires getting away with not paying taxes. That's not the problem. It's Ukraine. What a bunch of bunk that is.
It's a bunch of bunk. Trump added something like $7 to $8 trillion to the national debt. And then the Republicans turn around and say, oh, wow. Now suddenly we've got to cut everything, including aid to Ukraine, which is just crazy.
Well, that's not rocket science, folks. So I'm here to tell all of you out there to try to tell everybody to make an attempt to try to convert a portion of the other side. Now, what do I mean by that? You need to call your representatives, your senators, your governor, your mayor, your everybody,
state reps,
your next door neighbors, and tell them to put up signs. One of my ideas was putting up billboards next to our expressways so that all these truck drivers or just people driving to their jobs in general, will be passing these billboards, and we'll see signs like, Trump and the Republicans are out to dissolve Social Security. And that's no exaggeration, because Trump already, when he was in office, cut the payroll tax. And had he been re-elected, he would have did away with the payroll tax altogether. And that would have meant what? That Social Security would have been
insolvent a lot sooner.
Right.
Now, it can be made solvent by raising the cap. And of course, if we can get billionaires to pay into it, it will
precisely where I'm coming from. That whole problem could be alleviated, but in order to do that, we have to vote all Democrats. We have to have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and we have to get rid of the filibuster. But the only way to do that is to get the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
It's going to require all people that are on the ball, that realize what they're... And it's not even that you give up your selfishness if you are, a selfish person, because it's in your self-interest. If you are a working person, if you don't make, say, $1 million a year, I mean...
Or if you don't have a pension from the government, you're relying on Social Security, one day, what will you do if it's not there? And the Republicans, not just Trump, but Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, and now he's, I think, a senator. He's got an 11-point plan it sounds nice to say sunset. Sunset basically means they're going to crush your Social Security and take it away.
It means it's going to go away. It's going to go down below the horizon.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what it means.
Yeah, well, sunset sounds nice, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I don't care if I lose my Social Security through sunset. That's okay.
Those Republicans have just a great way of using BS words.
Right. So enough with this. It's because of Ukraine. Now I want to add Ukraine to this discussion a little bit, because we've got two phonies out there that are out there telling everybody that Ukraine, Putin was justified in invading Ukraine because NATO was at his doorstep, and Poland joined NATO in 1999. How many years ago was that? Long time. More than 2 decades ago, right?
24 years.
Right. Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia joined in 2004. Again, almost 20 years ago, right? Almost, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, now all of a sudden it's Putin's excuse for going into Ukraine, and they're pointing weapons at Russia. What is the truth about Ukraine?
The truth is that they gave up their nuclear weapons. They had a signed agreement
Budapest Memorandum.
The United States, the United Kingdom, that's Great Britain,
and Russia,
and with Russia. And it was signed by Russia that they would...
And Bill Clinton, President
Bill Clinton, the United States President, and the Prime Minister of Great Britain. It was signed that all three of these countries would come to Ukraine's aid if they were invaded.
By anybody.
And by anybody, including... But Russia's... Not only they're not giving them aid, they're bombing them and killing children.
They're committing genocide.
Killing thousands of people.
Was it just yesterday that 51 people were killed in a bombing?
50
at a restaurant. Just bomb a restaurant.
Just doing the normal things that people do when they're in between doing war, trying to do war.
And the bastards in Russia doing the normal things that they do, which is killing people.
Yeah. Well, Russia is a violent country, and it is a country. Remember what the Soviets did, the horrible things they did. You talk about NATO. Poland joined NATO partly because they were invaded by Soviet Russia.
Yeah, and millions were killed, and millions were sent to the slave labor camps of the Siberian Gulag.
They have a memory for things.
100,000 Polish women were raped by Soviet-Russian troops, while the Soviet-Russians were the allies that were on their way to Berlin, but they killed millions of Poles in the process.
They did it because they had a pact with Hitler, an evil pact by two evil dictators.
The war started, and they were an aggressor right from the beginning. Exactly. There were two aggressors, two bullies.
And here they are repeating that error of being an aggressor against an independent country that did not offend them in any way, that was not a danger to them in any way. And just because Putin wanted to take over this land, a land grab and a materials grab, I mean, there's lithium now in Ukraine, huh?
Has that been confirmed?
Yeah. I mean, it may not be the biggest find, but there's also grain in Ukraine. And what did Putin do? He bombed the grain. Ukraine was harvesting and going to send to Africa. People will starve because of what Putin did.
Yeah, not just in
just in Ukraine,
but in Africa,
in other countries that don't even seem to have, the sense in the United Nations to make a fuss about that.
Well, the two liars, the two phonies I'm talking about is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And do you know who the other one is?
Could it be Cornel West?
Cornel West.
Yeah.
These are two righteous men who are basically endorsing genocide by saying that it was because of the U.S. Now, first of all, the U.S. doesn't tell any country to join NATO. NATO is an organization where all the members have to vote on it, and the country that wishes to join,
they have to apply.
Request.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They apply.
And
they make their decision.
It's not NATO expansion, it's NATO protection.
Correct. NATO's protective cooperation between the nations.
Right. So when you say Poland expanded, Poland requested protection. NATO protection.
Right. Because of their memory of what the Soviet Russians had done to them.
Right. Now, let's not forget that Russia, in between World War II till today, Russia went into Georgia, and then it went into Chechnya twice. And I believe the town...
Killed many civilians. Killed many
Grozny, is it?
Grozny was the capital, I think, of Chechnya.
Yeah, and then...
They almost destroyed
or was that Georgia? Was it?
I think Georgia's a different...
But they went into Georgia to test the West, to see how we would react.
Yeah.
And since nothing was done when they went into Georgia, he waited a few more years, and then he tested us with the 2 Chechnya campaigns. Okay, still nothing was done. Then he went in and just seized Crimea because the Crimeans didn't...
Crimea was legally part of Ukraine.
Yeah, but the Crimeans didn't expect that. So it's like they had no military there to defend them. So they just walked right in and took it.
Right.
And again, President Obama was the president at that time, and he didn't do much.
He didn't do very much at all. It was an act of aggression. He should have invoked the Budapest Memorandum at that time.
Right. And then Russia went ahead and bombed the nation of Syria back to the Stone Age.
Horrible.
And nothing was really pretty much done about all that. So now he waits a few more years, and he thinks, oh, wow, I could take back what used to be mine, or used to be Soviet Union.
Well, it used to be part of the Soviet Union.
Now, let's get one thing straight. The Soviet Union was basically the Russia Union. Russia was the big dog.
Yeah, it was territories that were conquered by Russia.
Yeah,
and,
they were the top dog in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So the name could have been Union of Soviet Russian Republics.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have called it, but unfortunately, Ukraine was part of that, and Ukraine took most of the casualties for the Soviet Union during World War II, and Stalin even used Ukraine as kind of like cannon fodder. But let's get back to the series.
They virtually starved the people there. 3 million
did that too.
Have died. Yeah.
They did that too, and he abandoned troops. And some of them, a lot of them froze to death. Some of them fell into the scorched earth policy. Yeah. It's just a horrible thing. But getting back to this day and age, as of right now, what's going on in Ukraine is just a travesty. And we're going to sit by and we're going to say we don't want to fund democracy for the free world, all because a bunch of numbnuts think that that's the reason why our government is shutting down. And we should use the money for this and for that. And why aren't we using it for this and that? But
this money would...
let's go back to my 4 points. We need to do those 4 points.
This money is at least what we should be doing for Ukraine if we don't send troops.
Now, tell the public again about your idea.
There is a way to get around that right now.
Well, in addition
to money that the U.S. probably ought to be spending on Ukraine, not probably, but is morally obligated.
Yeah.
There is a way using an act that was used by George H.W. Bush, Pappy Bush, at the time of the first Iraq War. That was the Saddam Hussein War. And he used it in order to seize Iraqi assets in this country that froze because they could do that with bank regulations.
Yeah.
They froze that, and they actually did use that for reconstruction of Iraq. We can do the same thing with Russian assets frozen in this country today.
Now who suggested that first?
Now,
was it you or was it that?
I think it was Mr. Browder, Bill Browder, who was an anti-Putin guy. He's a capitalist, but he's a good man. He's a moral person, and he was behind the Magnitsky Act. But now Lawrence Tribe has suggested that
The
we use this law.
Magnitsky Act.
He had that a different act. It's an international. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's an international economic emergency, I think, act. And the United States, with Biden's signature, could do that. It might be better to have an act of Congress that's might be what Biden has been waiting for, which unfortunately with Congress in chaos may not happen. But Congress ought to do that too. They ought to do both things. They ought to fund it from the U.S. side, and they ought to fund it using Russian seized assets.
Right, and the other thing that should be done about Ukraine is another thing that you suggested, that we increase the amount of Iron Dome technology and send it to Ukraine so that they can defend themselves from all the missiles coming in. So that what happened just the other day, 51 people being killed at a restaurant, would not happen. If they had, I mean, we give all this money to Israel, and Israel are half of the building block of this technology, correct?
Yeah, a year or so ago, I was really gung-ho that Iron Dome ought to be gotten to Ukraine, but Israel put kind of this kibosh on that because of their prime ministers just being lousy.
Yeah, and today in the news, they're reviving another war there.
The problem is that
but
we also could have supplied more Patriot missile systems to Ukraine, and we've been dragging our feet on that.
We've also been dragging our feet on jets. If they had the power to do sorties from the air, they could knock out the remaining Russian positions.
Yeah, F-16s would run rings around